Hello and welcome to OEM Equivalents, the best choice for you and your customers. I'm Lauren Coughlin, Managing Editor of Food Service Equipment Reports, and I'm joined today by Tom Pendre, President of All Points. Today, Tom is going to walk us through what OEM equivalents are, how they can impact your business, how they can increase profit, and much more. Whether you're a service tech who's interested in increasing profit or a dealer looking to add value and build customer loyalty, you're in the right place. At the end of our presentation today, we're going to have some time for Q&A. As we go, please submit your questions in the chat box on the right-hand menu, and we'll circle back and get to as many questions as we possibly can. Thank you so much for joining us today, and without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Tom Pendre.
Hey, thanks, Lauren, and welcome and good afternoon from Chicago to all of the webinar attendees, and thanks for sharing this opportunity and allowing us to share a few thoughts on OEM equivalents with the food service industry today. You know, each of you have gone through just an unprecedented and dramatic upheaval in your business since the pandemic hit, and your business model has certainly been, interrupted, changed in dramatic fashion in ways you never thought. So really applaud all your tenacity and all the entrepreneurial spirit that it takes to serve this great industry of ours. You know, you're servicing, operators, customers, and the consumers, and you're doing such a great job of it in such difficult times. So it's really terrific what you're doing, and greatly appreciated overall. And we'd also like to thank FER for hosting this and connecting people and ideas and the ability to share ideas with others, which I think is just such an important part of the industry, that where we can learn from each other and also have a forum for people to collect new ways to potentially do business or meet new people as well. So my name's Tom Pendre, as already introduced, and I'm the president of All Points, and I'm just delighted, today to be able to share a little bit with each and every one of you about OEM equivalents and how this can be the best choice for you and for your customers as well. We're going to cover in the agenda today really three areas. On one, understanding the OEM equivalents, and then in two different industries that service this food service industry, and that being service agencies and then also the food service dealers as well. So let's start with understanding the fundamentals or some of the elementary things about OEM equivalents and the ABCs of this as well, and which I think is a really interesting business to be involved in. And many of you, have an understanding of OEM, and most things originate with the OEM. And part of it is demonstrating and showing what the differences are from OEM and what OEM equivalents are. But let's first start with OEM parts. These are parts that are branded and sold through the original equipment manufacturer, or the OEM. And obviously everything originates or starts with this part or equipment called OEM. And on the right-hand side here, you can see whether or not this is OEM equivalents or not. Certainly an OEM brand is not an OEM equivalent. But let's talk about what makes up OEM equivalents. And I think you'll start to get a better understanding of what OEM equivalents are if you're new to this or don't have an understanding of what and the distinctions are for these. But let's also start with OCM, or original component parts, or original component manufacturers. And these are the unbranded parts from an original component manufacturer. Now, these are often made at the same factory, and it's actually the same part as the OEM, but they lack the OEM branding. And both of these parts undergo the same rigorous testing and certification and the quality assurance that goes behind OCM parts or OEM equivalents as well. Many marketers like to associate an OEM part as being a higher quality part, or when in fact they are often working with the same part, and it's the same thing as the OEM, just really lacking the branding. So next is the exact match. And exact match are OEM equivalent parts that have the same exact specifications and materials as the OEM part. And this is also an OEM equivalent. And interesting enough, an OCM and an exact match can also be an OEM part or used in OEM equipment. And this is where the overlap of the gray areas of the industry start to intersect here, but ultimately OCM and exact match are used in equipment manufacturing today as well. And then one other component is OEM equivalents. And these are designed and manufactured to function the same as OEM parts, you know, again, without the brand name. So part of what being an OEM equivalent is, it's not branded. But all three of these examples, OCM, exact match, OEM equivalents, all of these are used in equipment or OEM equipment, but those three are OEM equivalents as used and designated by the industry. Now, some of you, have grown up in the industry and been involved with this and may have heard the word generic. Now, generic or generic parts is a very old term in the industry. It's from decades ago as part of the business, but it's really determined as OCM, exact match, or more importantly, but also more of the distinction is that it's either OEM or OEM equivalents today in the business. So I wanted to give everybody a little bit of an understanding of how this relates to OEM equivalents, maybe utilizing some other industries as well that some of us are all very familiar with. I'm going to use two examples today, because this is not new to the food service industry. This has been around for many, many years, OEM equivalents in this business. And it's been around in other industries outside of the food service industry for a lot longer. It's probably just hasn't been adopted as quickly as some of these other industries that I'm going to mention here as well. But in terms of utilizing the company that has one of the most ubiquitous consumer products, and that's the iPhone, and that's Apple, the company of Apple, using over 200 different component manufacturers, or mostly OCMs, that they use, and they bring all of those together in China to produce ultimately the iPhone that most consumers use, or over half of consumers that use telephones today. They're using an iPhone. And so Apple then creates a brand or an OEM called the Apple iPhone off of those 200 component manufacturers. If you're out replacing a screen, that's one of the most frequently broken pieces on an iPhone, that screen is a OEM equivalent. It's coming from the same manufacturer. It doesn't have a brand name on it. It's replaced at a lower cost when you replace that than if you would buy it from Apple. It's because it's an OEM equivalent, but it's the same quality, same product that goes into the Apple iPhone. And another example is the car manufacturers or the auto industry. The auto industry has its actual very beginnings with OEM equivalents. And the Model T, as an example, was actually built from components to ultimately create the first car in mass production. But today, all of the auto manufacturers heavily rely upon OCM or other manufacturers to help create thousands of component parts that ultimately get built into the original equipment, or known as the actual designated car brand. Maybe it's a Chevy or a Ford Mustang, but they're using thousands of component parts to build their cars. In addition to that, if you're around cars a great deal, or you've had to have your cars repaired, you have the OEM parts, you also have the OEM equivalents. Obviously, the OEM equivalents have a very different cost structure overall, but you also have brand names such as Napa or Monroe shocks and struts, and some of the other names in the business, like Fram oil filters, that are actually brand names, but are component manufacturers that are used as OEM equivalents. And the car companies and auto manufacturers in the industry certainly use a significant amount of components over the history of their lifespan in the industry in total. Today, the auto manufacturers and the OEM equivalent business is a $380 billion business. It's big, and there's a reason why it's big. It's because it's highly sought after, and the quality of the production and the parts certainly are of substantial quality, where they're used by consumers for safety in their own cars and their personal cars. So let's go to the next page in really a little more distinction about what is the difference and what differences lie between OEM equivalents as well as some of the OEMs and OCMs that all of you are very familiar with as well. So part of this is the understanding of OEM equivalents, and OCM. But let's first start with OEMs. So OEMs, and we exist in this business of food service equipment and also repairs because of the OEMs. They carry the equipment brand, and everything starts from there. And then is the warranty work that is covered. And OEMs are covered under the equipment warranties. And due to the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, and I'm not going to go into that, we could have a whole nother webinar associated with that. OCM and OEM equivalent parts would also qualify for warranty as work as well. But let me be absolutely clear on two things. One is that this is not absolutes that I'm talking in today. This is mostly directional, and especially on the warranty pieces of equipment. But you'll soon discover there is a significant amount of blurring between these channels. And the other thing is, we are not recommending at all that you use OEM equivalent parts for warranty work. You know, this is best left to the OEMs for a couple of reasons. One, you're being paid by the OEMs to repair the equipment, and they are providing the parts for free. And you should take advantage of that, because there's no reason to buy that part to perform the warranty work. Now, the other is that these parts and are sold as OEM or OEM equivalents and OCM. They're sold to equipment manufacturers. They're sold to other distributors as well, such as All Points. So those are distributed. Parts of all three of those columns are distributed and sold to equipment manufacturers and distributed by dealers. Now, in terms of the cost differential, OEMs are higher in cost, and OEM equivalents and OCMs, not surprising, are lower in cost. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well in the future as part of this webinar as well. And then as part of the table stakes for certification and testing, this is an expectation in industries, is an expectation for all parts, whether it's OEM equivalents, and OCM as well. All right, let's go on to what's in a brand name. So part of this is that in an OEM equivalent, but also what is part of the brand names, and what are the OCMs and the OEM equivalents, and how does that stack up, and how does that compare to OEMs? But first, and using an example as All Points, is we provide many parts for food service equipment manufacturers to our customers, and helping them manage quality and this whole supply chain issues while keeping costs low. We exist to help our customers buy parts at a much lower cost and fulfill their customer needs that they have, both in the operators from the dealers, but also from the service technicians as well. This means that the same exact parts we sell to our customers at a lower price are also labeled as OEM brands, and those are sold at a higher price, yet it's the exact same part. And like all prudent companies, you know, manufacturers are identifying areas that they can cut out that aren't a core competency, that chew up large sums of capital or invested capital, and they can no longer provide resources to. And manufacturers are outsourcing a lot of production now, and more so than ever before, to third-party manufacturers and other manufacturers. And it's really helped create just this large and sophisticated manufacturing industry that supports our great industry in food service, and it's available to be able to leverage. And so, you know, manufacturers and OEMs are leveraging all of these component manufacturers. We certainly are leveraging our component manufacturers that we have a long history with to create and bring to market parts like this here. Now, this is a temperature controller for a fryer, and it is a $635 list price. The All Point number is on the right-hand side, and the OEM product is on the left-hand side here. And you can see that there really isn't a distinction. It's because there isn't a distinction. This is the same part. It's built by the same component manufacturer. If this were an OEM, you would probably see, if you can, I don't know if you can see my pointer or not, but up in this left-hand corner in this open space would be possibly a printed logo. And this list for $635 is the list price. And this is also used in over 60 pieces of equipment, the same controller in 60 pieces of equipment. So for the audience here of dealers and service technicians and service companies, yeah, you would probably purchase this part for about 60% off list, somewhere in that range overall. And that difference in price between list and that 60 off is your margin, because you're selling that to your customers at the list price. And that's where OEM equivalents really bring added value, in addition to the quality, but also obviously in the price as well, and helping our customers manage that gap, but in terms of margin gap. And the important thing and distinction here is that these are the same parts, and they're of very high quality and used all over the industry. And there is a difference here, and the difference is primarily the price. Now, understanding the OEM equivalents from reliability and also the safety as well, which we had talked about earlier. So part of this, I wanted to share a little bit about All Points and using this. And I know we're talking about the industry of OEM equivalents. Some of the examples I'm going to use are from All Points as well, just to give you an indication, because that's what we best understand. But we've been around for 42 years. With 42 years of experience, and we're also selling on 6 different continents today. And ultimately, we sell to tens of thousands of service technicians around the globe. And throughout all these years, they've been field testing all of our parts. And so they field test these live in operators' kitchens, and not just test kitchens. These are live operations in and day out. Working environments in the kitchens all across the globe. And they share all of the feedback with us, ultimately helping us, one, continue to make improvements in the parts, but also improving the performance of those to make it better for installation and handling by service technicians. And it's just an invaluable network for us to have over the history of our company, to be able to provide great parts to technicians with high reliability and safety, because they give us good feedback, and it helps us make continuous improvements as well. Now, the other important fact, and I think it might be surprising to many of you on the call today, but All Points supplies OEM parts for several manufacturers, meaning that manufacturers of equipment in the food service industry buy All Points OEM equivalents to build their equipment with. Now, companies have trusted us for decades on the high quality parts that we provide. Otherwise, they wouldn't build their equipment around our parts as well. So we're very pleased and very excited to actually be able to share that with everybody, because that's not widely understood about our business. And it makes great sense because equipment manufacturers, just like all of you, are really trying to identify ways to increase your margins, or at least bring some semblance of profitability back to your business, driven by the changes over the last 18 months, or maybe just because of the competitiveness in this industry. But manufacturers look for that, and they look for All Points to help deliver value, but also quality as well. Now, all of the suppliers meet specifications and testing certifications and standards. That's an expectation in any industry, including ours as well, and also for us. Now, the other thing is that the component manufacturers supply the same components to OEMs as they do to us as well, and carry the liability insurance for those parts, and or potentially any issues that would happen in the future for any of the part performance. Now, we're fortunate and we're glad to also share with you that in our history, we have not had any significant incident due to component performance. Now, there is parts that wear out, and there's also parts that don't perform as expected, like all, whether it's OEM or original component manufactured parts as well. We have no incidents to report on our performance. They're very safe and they're very reliable as well. And it's a very important consideration given the equipment and also the environments where our parts are performing day in and day out for multiple years as well. And also the All Points performance in, as I mentioned before, we've been using these parts for over 42 years, and the industry has been as well. And with that field testing of our components and our parts, we also have, and we also sell OEM parts in addition to the OEM equivalents. Now, the vast majority of our sales to the industry are OEM equivalents. They're just highly demanded, especially in this environment. But we've been able to measure the performance of OEM performance and quality and performance in terms of defect rates. And our parts of OEM equivalents actually perform better than OEMs. And so that has allowed us to introduce warranties that are twice as long as OEM equivalent or OEM warranties at 180 days versus the standard warranty for OEMs at 90 days. And that's all part of data, and it's also part of the performance over many, many decades. And it's part of the quality of our parts that we offer to the industry. So it's really exciting to be able to offer that to our customers and help them save even more with the longer wearing parts that are available through Allpoints and Allpoints OEM equivalents. So let's talk a little bit about some of the certification as well, which is really important in the industry and for all of us as well. And like any other industry, there's certain testing laboratories or third-party organizations that test. I'm going to use a typical cooking-related product that would be sold as an OEM equivalent. And these testings, are annually. Some are semi-annual. Some are certified quality in the manufacturing plants as well. But the CSA, or the Canadian Standards Association, is attached to electrical and gas. And you have certifications for either Canada, which is the C, or the US, which is US, or if it's certified in both countries as well, which is a high level of certification, the C and the US, in addition to just the CSA certification. Now, also for electric and electric components or gas and component testing, UL is utilized, and that's a quarterly testing. The NSF, again, for this industry, the National Sanitary Foundation, the organization also holds accreditations for ANSI and IAS, highly noted, really important for food equipment, any products that come in contact with food in the restaurant environment. The NSF and any of those components are tested that have contact with the food as well. And then you also have other organizations that might not be highly known as well, but the BSI for gas and electric products. Like I mentioned before, we sell to the 6 continents. We're in the Southern Hemisphere as well. Different certifications sometimes for gas in Australia or in the Southern Hemisphere. AGA, or also known as the Australian Gas Association certification for some parts that are related to the typical cooking related products as well. And then others, in terms of the plumbing industry as well, with the connection with gas or water, you have the International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical officials as well. And all of these organizations are used, especially specifically for certain parts, certain manufacturers, depending upon the contact with food and the type of pieces of equipment or the parts that they represent as well. But ultimately, the testing and the certification environment is no different in not only our industry, but also for our parts and for Allpoints and for OEM equivalents in the industry as well. Now, the other thing is that if you look at not only parts testing, but also the manufacturing process, over the last 50 years, if any of you have been in the manufacturing environment or currently are in the manufacturing environment, the consistency of those raw materials or the raw material inputs are critically important. And that has changed dramatically in the production process over the last 50 years, especially with the introduction over the last 15 or 20 years of ROHS, the Restrictions of Hazardous Materials Directive, from the EU, which I think has been really complementary, but also really important because of how it limits and puts really tight controls over the type of raw materials that are submitted for production. And it really eliminates bad raw materials before they ever get into the production environment as well. And these raw material manufacturers can ill afford to provide under-spec types of raw materials, whether it's metals or if it's plastics, that don't conform to the manufacturing community's expectations, but also the expectations for these materials. because, you know, ROHS really has helped quickly eliminate those issues. And this community is so small and also so regulated, but also so connected on data sharing that manufacturers can ill afford to have any type of material that doesn't meet the specs. And it's quickly eliminated from the supply chain. And any type of company that doesn't have good quality materials is quickly eliminated from probably the production within this industry as well, which I think is really important to note. But you know, these things are like lead and cadmium and mercury that are eliminated through ROHS. And then you have polybrominated bipheноls like PBBs and polybrominated diphenols. And then there's some phthalates as well, which is like the plasticizers used in the plastic industry. You know, as consumers, we want to be protected and know that the products we're using, you know, are protecting us from even having contact with that and not having the right materials or exposed to those materials. So we work with manufacturers. The manufacturers have great raw material specs as well. And again, the raw materials are used in OEMs as well as OCMs and also OEM equivalents as well. And you know, the last piece on this is that, you know, the certification and the raw materials all play hand in hand, in addition to the quality of the products and how we approach the quality and improvements of the products historically. And again, like I had mentioned before, we really utilize our customer feedback about making improvements. And you know, we had an ice maker dispenser a few years back that we wanted to make improvements. We actually changed the metal and made it all stainless steel, including the rivets. They don't have any contact with the ice or the water, but ultimately improving the quality of the materials, the metal, and the construction of that product led our service technicians to have better quality products delivered from All Points. And they are all Points OEM equivalents as well. So there's a lot that goes behind this and a lot of scrutiny. And it's very important for all of us to have that, to have reassurance that these are high quality products, but also parts that we're using, that we're selling, and that you're selling to your customers or utilizing in your everyday business as well. Okay. One other thing I wanted to share with you is the quality as well. Just one small fact, or two facts I wanted to share with you is that the companies that we use in our manufacturers, they're of such high quality that their QA labs are approved to test and provide data to certifying associations. And the manufacturers also request our component manufacturers to test their equipment. So there's this relationship of not only manufacturing, but high quality manufacturing, where these manufacturing companies that we use are used by certifying organization or third-party organizations because of their high quality labs and their quality control to ultimately test other products and prove out other products as well. And one small fact, a little tidbit, is that Tesla, the car manufacturer company that some of you might know that it's in the electric car manufacturing business, they're known for quality and safety. And you might know their leader or their CEO, Elon Musk. You know, they use the same manufacturer for car components as we use for some of our components as well that are known as OEM equivalents. So I thought you might want to know something about that, because that's the type of quality that we have in production with some of our component manufacturers and some of the high quality parts that are being produced all over the globe for this industry, and that we happen to represent as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the effects of COVID that we've all experienced in the food service industry. These aren't new facts, but you know, what is changing and what has changed with restaurants as well. We're all experiencing this, but we know that restaurants have closed in record numbers. Over 110,000 closures last year, which is rather significant. That's from the National Restaurant Association. And the impact on this is, you know, fairly dramatic. You know, you're looking at staffing changes that these companies have gone through as well, in addition to the labor cost. And you know, I had run a restaurant chain in the past, and I can tell you we had a big delivery business because it was a pizza chain. And this shift to takeout and delivery, including the low margin third-party delivery, is really a dramatic hit on the P&Ls for the operators that each of you are serving today in the industry. This takes out the vast majority of profitability of that check or that ticket or that delivery of that food items to all of our homes through third-party delivery. So they're having to reinvent themselves, providing off-premise delivery of the products and food to all of our homes across the US, but it's costing the vast majority of their margin dollars on each one of those tickets. And as we know, that's been a big part of the boom in the operator business. The supply chain is very disrupted in every industry across the globe. We aren't, immune from this at all. You're all experiencing this. We're all experiencing it together. One of the recent phenomenons is broadline distribution being disrupted. The companies that are so important in this industry to deliver some of the products and supplies, and certainly the food products that are made in meal preparation. But recently, they've experienced low warehouse employee rates, where they can't even load trucks. And then once the trucks are loaded, there's this disruption where the trucks don't have drivers to deliver the products to the restaurants. So restaurants are being disrupted there as well. And so they're having to move all of their staffing and production in the restaurants around because of a new area of disruption to their business, and that being the broadline distribution. So operators are looking for ways to cut expenses and recoup profits. Some of the things they're doing that they have control over is certainly limited menus, the labor costs, because the staffing issue is a very big, compelling area that they haven't had to deal with such intensity as they have most recently. They're shortening hours, closing on days that are historically low sales days, and so they might be closed more often than they historically have been. They're shifting operations to this new mix of business that they have. Some are closing dining rooms because of the lack of dining business or dine-in business. Dine-in business has been going down for over 15 years, and obviously the pandemic has changed that dramatically. But most are now running back of house for pickup, delivery, and drive-through if they have that, or converting to drive-throughs. And so they have to change things that they're doing in this area as well to cut expenses and pay for the pandemic changes or shifts that they're having. There's also the escalating cost of goods, the foods, and then, as I mentioned, the food service disruption as well. So operators are looking for ways to preserve cash. And so there's a big movement underway, and it was taking place right at the pandemic, the very early stages of the pandemic. We noticed this about 10 days into the pandemic, which would have been the late stages of March last year, where operators that were still open at that time, they were looking at repairing equipment versus replacing equipment. So for all of the dealers out here, obviously the equipment sales are down, but the maintenance and supplies and the repair segment is through the roof. And because the operators are looking at preserving capital in record numbers, if they can save $5,000, $10,000 on a piece of equipment or a new stove, or $40,000, $50,000 on a new oven, they're looking at, how do I pay my staff, or how do I convert to takeout or delivery, and where do I change my overall paradigm for serving the industry while staying in business. And there's a lot of Sophie's choices being made ultimately. And also there's this trickle down effect to all of you based upon this. Less restaurants to serve, so there's and if they're closing dining rooms, for the dealers, there's less, tabletop service tables, everything for the front of house, and there's, even less opportunities to the back of house. But it's different. It's a different opportunity. And then, certainly on repairs for the service technicians and the service agents out in the audience today, this is a dramatic shift in the business because, one, you have less service technicians working today. It's hard to find great technicians. And but the repairs are so important, and with the ability to repair more equipment versus the replace, there's going to be more opportunities, obviously, with the people that you have to make every service call count and utilize the right parts to make that money. But that's a big fundamental shift that's probably here to stay, because there's also some other evaluations that are taking place in the industry that I'm not going to go into too much depth for, but we're in this transitional period, and you're probably starting to see it, but many operators are starting to look at and weigh, you know, what am I going to do about the labor in the near future, and also what am I going to leverage on new equipment in the future? And there's this 3 to 5 year gap where robotics are going to come into play, artificial intelligence and machine learning that are going to build into the business and the industry. That's going to change the landscape of equipment that is used in the restaurant. So there's less labor, but there's also more efficient ways to service the customers that do utilize the restaurant. And that is a consideration that, you know, operators are pondering today, because this transformational shift is going to come. It's probably in the next 3 to 5 years, but they're also weighing, do I just continue to repair that equipment and then make that investment, that heavy investment in equipment in the near future as well? I'm just going to perform a time check, just see how we're doing. All right, so what we want to do is move forward with more just dedicated towards service agents and the service agent industry, covering on 2 areas here, the parts availability and greater versatility of OEM equivalent parts as well. So part of this is on availability, and this is on the interbrand compatibility of OEM equivalent parts and the cross-reference to OEMs. So OEM equivalent parts cross-reference to tens of thousands of OEM parts. You know, as an example, one of our gas regulators is used by 24 different OEM manufacturers today. And those 24 manufacturers have at least 115 different pieces of equipment that have that gas regulator in use. So a service company could carry one OEM equivalent SKU, that gas regulator that we have for you, and be ready for service calls on 115 different pieces of equipment. So there's less stock, there's less inventory dollars, less space needed in the truck as well. And then the other thing is the holy grail of service companies is that first time fix, leading to more billable hours. You know, as part of my background is within the beverage business at PepsiCo. And part of the operational responsibilities I had at one point in my career was actually running the service business. And it's such a magnificent business what our service agents go through in this industry. But ultimately, you know, being and knowing what that first time fix is and having those parts available is so important. So if we can move your billable service calls on a per day basis from 3.8 to say 4.8, get an extra call a day, 5 a week, you know, that's substantial improvement in bottom line revenue that you bill, but also flows through to your bottom line. And the parts availability that we have is really important for you to be able to have for first time fix. And so, you know, we carry tens of thousands of parts in stock. We have access through our component manufacturers of 200,000 parts that cross to OEMs. And to have that both in stock in your trucks, in your warehouses, in some of the service agencies also sell parts to service agents in their communities. There's also warehouses, there's suppliers, there's dealers. To have all of these parts, that availability for parts for that first time fix is so important, but they're readily available all across the US, all across the globe in OEM equivalent form for you to be able to use for those first time fixes as well. Now let's talk a little bit about profitability, because this is rather substantial for you and your industry. This is why you exist in your business amongst many other reasons. But a Pentelec study performed for the industry highlighted the cost advantages of using OEM equivalents and how powerful they were at converting your revenue into more profitable dollars overall, to the tune of 29% less expensive, which that's all flow through to the bottom line. OEM equivalents, not only being high quality, are of high value to you to make more money in your business. Per service agent, it's about $16,500. That adds up significantly given just the sheer number of service calls that service agents make on an annual basis. You know, if you look at that, most service companies have obviously more than one service tech. You know, if you take that $16,500 per service tech, you apply it over an example of say 25 service techs, you know, that's over $400,000 of bottom line improvement by converting to OEM equivalents. And, you know, most of you are in business to obviously more than 1 year. If you look at that over a decade, you're looking at $4.2 million more dollars in profitability for a service company that has 25 service techs. That's substantial, and that is game changing. That's life changing. But imagine what you can do in terms of attracting more talent, training talent, paying for more benefits for your company. The type of workplace that you could use or leverage with that would be so important. And there's also the facts that we have from our own customers, and these are large service companies that have shared the data with us. But their divisions that they have across the company, where the divisions that use a higher mix of OEM equivalents, they generate proven more profitability per service call and in total dollars by using OEM equivalents. So that higher mix of OEM equivalents generates proven bottom line dollars. The other thing you could use is inventory cost reductions, truck stock inventory. Everybody's trying to save and look for cash savings. You can do it there, but also on warehouse inventory. Many service companies stock parts in their own warehouse for that first time fix and have readily available in the cities that they operate in. And you can convert that business to OEM equivalents, obviously reducing your cash consumption and increase your profitability on those service calls as well. But there is a substantial amount of money in the industry to be saved from OEM equivalents if you can just look at it on a per service agent basis. Now let's turn a little bit to the warranty considerations. Just given the time constraints, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I know that there's a lot of warranty considerations from our service agent customers. They've been talking about this, and we're not recommending one thing or another, but these are the considerations that service agents are going through today about whether or not they should perform warranty work, because of the considerations that they're looking at today is that manufacturers still dictate the rates for warranty work, and they're typically below market rates. And given the constraint on the number of service techs and the low number of service calls, companies are doing the prudent thing to looking at, hey, what is my best customers producing? Where do I get the most margin? How do I make the most use of the assets and resources that I have? And part of this is the consideration for the warranty work. And also, the manufacturers dictate where the payment approvals are approved or not. The length of warranties are increasing as well for some of the equipment. And then warranty work often isn't always as profitable as proven out by the data that the service companies provide to us as well. Now, there's the business considerations as well, is that other customers have discontinued warranty work to focus on non-warranty opportunities, obviously because they've proven out to themselves that it's more profitable. Warranty work is certainly important and it's needed in the industry, but there are certain considerations that these companies are making. And then the other is, does the warranty work generate enough return business? Part of the allure of warranty work is you might pick up some contracts with some of the operators that you're conducting this warranty work if you don't have a contract with them today for their future warranty work. The information that's being shared widely amongst the service agents, they are not seeing that turn into actual contract work for themselves. It's more important for them to have just great, consistent service in the industry, and that's how they're actually picking up more business. Now, if we can, just given the time, I'm going to quickly move to food service dealers. Our food service dealers provide this incredible support, just so valuable, because you're trusted advisors and consultants to restaurant chains and operators in your communities and a region across the entire country, or in many cases across the globe as well. And you're really helping your customers to maximize their budgets, and you work with them to meet those budgeted needs. As you know, it's difficult to make money in the restaurant industry, and you're helping them make money and streamline their operations as well. But in terms of OEM equivalents programs, really offer a large cost savings for you, but also the versatility in terms of how you go to market on bids and quotes and RFPs. You can leverage the OEM equivalents to win more RFPs and bids. And for those RFPs that you currently have, you can increase the profitability of those due to the OEM equivalents. And again, with the trusted and proven out quality of these products, this is a really nice opportunity for dealers and resellers to be able to make more money using the OEM equivalents as well. And part of that being a trusted advisor, you're bringing business solutions and cost-cutting ideas to your operators. You can help bring ideas to them that can help them save money. They can save thousands of dollars per store annually, from our supplies or MRO products and some of the components that you would be selling to ultimately the operators as well. Now, the other thing is that many dealers have a refurb business as well. So you also have parts rooms, and you're refurbing that equipment. And that refurb equipment is obviously out of warranty. And it makes incredible sense to utilize your parts room to build them out with OEM equivalent parts first and foremost, and then refurb as much as possible with OEM equivalents, given that you want a lower cost of that repair and refurb before you place that back out or you lease that piece of equipment back out in the marketplace or sell that. And ultimately, you can generate more margin dollars doing that as well. And then part of the dealers utilizing more service technicians or their own service technicians out in the marketplace, obviously the same would go as with utilizing OEM equivalents in terms of the serviceability of that equipment in the marketplace as well. So you're going through this whole gyration as dealers about the cost to replace and being able to sell equipment, which is a very important component of your business. And from the customer's perspective or the operator's perspective, they're going through this whole gymnastics of, do I replace, do I repair? And part of that is looking at cost of new equipment. What does that cost? Do I, again, invest tens of thousands of dollars in new when I have so many other priorities that I have in front of that about my business that shifted dramatically, most likely going to stay the same for the coming years. So that cost of equipment is primarily what is it and can they afford it, and what other priorities are they spending it on? But certainly when you replace equipment, there's charges for disconnect to old equipment and utilities, disposal fees, the new equipment installation and charges for calibration. The consideration for all of us is taking on new equipment or repairs, but also new equipment that's installed, and how do you train people and what is required with that, the savings that would be required or that they could actually participate in if they just repaired the equipment versus replacing it as well. And so that's a big consideration for many of the operators out there. I'm sure all of you as dealers are going through today. Now, I know we have just a few brief minutes here, so I just wanted to touch briefly upon why manufacturers order directly from All Points and utilize OEM equivalents in their equipment that they take to market, whether that's supplies, whether that's MROs, or it's the actual components that go into functioning equipment. And we've also created products like fry baskets ourselves, or utilize manufacturers to produce those for the market. But manufacturers come directly to All Points for our high quality standards and reliable parts. As I mentioned before, for over 40 years of the experience. If you count the FMP business that we also have, that is also part of All Points today as well, which has been, FMP has been in business for over 100 years. But in terms of manufacturers buying our equipment, it's because of that standards and the high quality that we have and the reliable parts, the testing and certification that come with the parts as well, the profitability that this enhances for the equipment sales ultimately generates more profitability for manufacturers to utilize our parts as well. And this broad and deep assortment and inventory of commercial kitchen parts, it's extensive, it's expansive, and we are a go-to option, and so is the industry for OEM equivalents. And there's always all types of levels in any industry, even for manufacturers of food service equipment. Same thing with parts, same in all other industries. You have high quality, experienced companies that manufacture or supply parts or equipment. You have mid-tier, and then you have bottom tier or really low value. But the high quality parts and the high quality service of these parts, they're coming to All Points for the experience and the depth of those parts of the inventory as well. And the partnership that we have with the highest quality manufacturers in the world is extremely important, but certainly a consideration when manufacturers come and conduct business with us as well. So just to wrap up, and I really appreciate your time. It's really your choice, and you do have a choice in what you choose. And if you didn't know about the choice, hopefully we've been able to share a little bit about that, about the OEM equivalent parts and the industry and what value it brings and the value proposition that it brings to each of you in this just terrific industry that we all operate in. You have the OEM equivalent part on the right, or you have the OEM part on the left. It's a choice of yours. We hope you choose wisely, and we ultimately hope that you choose Allpoints as well. So with that, I want to thank you again for your time and out of your incredibly busy days. And I know that we are wrapping up here with just a few minutes left, but I wanted to turn it back over to Lauren and FER, and if there might be a question that could be answered before we depart the webinar. So thank you again for all your time. It's been a real pleasure being able to share some of the OEM equivalent business and industry with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. You packed a lot of great information into that time. Good job. I have not seen any audience questions come in yet, but we still have just under 5 minutes. So if you guys want to get those in, we will still get those answered for you. In the meantime, while we let everyone digest, Tom, if people take away just one piece of knowledge on OEM equivalents today, what do you hope that they learned?
That I would say that there's so much to take away. But the industry widely uses OEM equivalents. It's a competitive disadvantage if you're not using them in your business today. And so I would really say that there's a significant opportunity, and companies are looking for opportunities like this today because there's been so much damage inflicted out of the control of anybody in this industry by this pandemic. But you do have choices and you have opportunities. And I think these, the one thing that you walk away with is that you do have a choice, and that your competitors are using this, and they are using these parts at unprecedented rates. I just can't explain, Lauren, how exponential our growth has been through the pandemic because of this conversion. It's conversion to OEM equivalents. It started before the pandemic, but it has just been accelerated by this pandemic. So everybody deserves to do more with their business and make more money, because that's why they're in business. And you're at a disadvantage if you're not using OEM equivalents today.
Okay. And I know your last final slide there has your website. Is there any other way that it's best for people to reach you or your team?
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly reach out through Allpoints as well. Any of our just incredible sales team members, which we have all across the country. But for me, you can reach me at tpendry. So that's TPENDREY at allpointsfps.com. And again, that is tpendry, PENDREY at allpointsfps.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. So if you have other questions, be glad to answer those. Just delighted, Lauren, being able to share with the industry, and look forward to meeting many of those that are participating on the webinar today and some of the upcoming conferences. It'll be good for all of us to get back together and share more stories on what you're doing to improve your business, but also how we can help you and how the industry can help you continue to grow and do the things that you want to accomplish in this food service industry. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.